परिचयं कारयन्तु इति।
सर्वेभ्यो नमः। अद्य प्रायोगिक संस्कृतम् इति शीर्षकम् उपलक्ष्य आयोज्यमानायाः अन्ताराष्ट्रीय कार्यशालायाः षष्ठं दिनं वर्तते। अद्य अस्माकं प्रार्थनाम् उररीकृत्य व्याख्यानार्थं समुपस्थिताः सन्ति श्रीमन्तः सिद्धार्थ छब्रा महोदयाः। तेषाम् ईषत् परिचयं विधास्यामि। Siddharth Chabra has a master's degree from the University of Michigan in Information Science. He has contributed to conferences at MIT, the University of Washington, Triple IT Hyderabad, the University of Paris, the University of Dublin, and other universities. He has studied Sanskrit from an early age, which allows him to read the Puranas in the original Sanskrit. That, combined with Sanskrit natural language processing tools, enabled him to team up with Madhavendra Puri Das to discover that the Puranas anticipate sophisticated scientific data in a wide range of fields. His work has been featured in Times of India, DD News, and Indic Today. Now, I welcome and invite Shri Siddharth Chabra to deliver the lecture. Shrimantah Siddharth Mahodayah Samprati Samprarthante व्याख्यानार्थं तेषां व्याख्यानस्य विषयः भवति NASA संस्कृतपुराणात् किम् अधीतम्, what NASA can learn from the Puranas इति विषयः वर्तते। तं विषयम् आधारीकृत्य अद्य अस्मान् उद्बोधयिष्यन्ति। अतः तान् अहम् अस्मिन् सन्दर्भे सम्प्रार्थये व्याख्यानार्थं। सिद्धार्थ महोदयः।
Thank you, Shivaram Mahodaya and Dr. Kanakavalli for the opportunity to present my work to an esteemed audience here at the 7-day conference on Sanskrit literature. I can't thank you enough, and actually I feel very small because although I studied Sanskrit for a long time, I am by no means any expert in this field. All of you are geniuses, Sanskrit experts, Sanskrit, you can speak fluently, Panini grammar by heart. I mean, by those measures, I'm nowhere close to it. However, just as a child learns a language by hearing it again and again, I have caught on some of the Sanskrit, and that enabled me to do the research. So I'm grateful and to both of you for trusting in me that I can present something of usefulness to the audience. And as with any Sanskrit literature, I begin with the Mangala Charan. So I will say a small prayer to my spiritual master. Om Jnana Timrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshrumitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Jayapataka Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasati Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So after seeking the blessings of the teachers and the holy name, we are ready to begin. I'll share my slides. Okay. So we are here. The topic of my workshop today is what NASA can learn from the Puranas. So first of all, before we begin, let's see what ideas do we have in regards to this. What do you think? What NASA can learn from the Puranas? I will take next 5 minutes, and whoever would like to speak, they're welcome to unmute themselves and share in one line. What do you think NASA can learn from the Puranas? And then I will share what I found NASA can learn from the Puranas. So, who would like to take the initiative? They can put in the chat
Yeah.
box, which I'm watching, or they can speak themselves.
Yeah. Good evening, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Aparna Rajans from Hyderabad, India. And I think there is a lot to be learned from the Puranas, not only by NASA, but even our own country, especially when it comes to environmental protection.
Okay, got it, Aparna. Environmental protection. We got it.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Aparna ji. Next. Padmavati ji is saying NASA can learn sound from the Puranas. Nada. I don't understand that. How does it work? Anyways, we'll take it. Somebody else. Aparna led the show. Anybody wants to follow in her footsteps and share? It's supposed to be a workshop. If it was not, so that's why I want to engage all of you. What do you think? The great scientific authorities of the world, what can they learn from the Puranas or the Vedas? You can throw anything. It doesn't hurt.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
This is Bhavna. So I've heard and I've read few documents about these that NASA can learn from Puranas using Vimana Shastra.
Vimana Shastra. Okay.
Yeah.
So-
Science of aeronautics.
Okay, great. Vimana Shastra. Okay. Raji saying that they can learn construction techniques. Okay, we take that also. That's 4. We have 4 different answers up to right now. What else? What more? Astronomy. Okay, got it. Astronomy. They can learn astronomy from the Puranas. Okay, that's great. What else?
Architecture, the art of architecture.
Oh, what's your name, Mahodaya?
Dr. Vinay Kumar Upadhyay.
Dr. Vinay Kumar Upadhyay ki jai. Very good. Architecture. Thank you. Dr. Nagaraj is saying Atma Astraya and calculation of time. Okay. Dr. Kamna Lad is saying radioactivity and Vastu. Very good. Anyone else?
They can know about the creations.
Creation, yes. They can learn about the origin of the world, origin of the universe.
Yes.
Very good. What else? We have 2 more minutes left before I start speaking, sharing my research. 3. Okay. Anybody else? What can great scientific organizations learn from Vedas? Dr. Kamal is saying universal particles. I guess what you mean is elementary particles of the universe. Okay. Like, Apa, Vayu. I think that's what you mean. Let's see. Yat Pinde Tat Brahmande. Okay. Very good. Anybody else? Dr. Shivram Bhatji, you're the chief organizer. We'd love to hear from you. Cosmology. Okay. Shiva Amma is saying NASA can learn Omkar. Okay. Very good. Dr. Ashok Kumarji is saying, oh wait, no, something he's saying. The last response, we need one more response, and then we close this question and questions. Let's see anybody else. What can great scientific organizations learn from the Puranas? Okay, here you go. Dr. Shriram Bhatt is saying Bhagavata Astitvam. So he's saying the existence of the Supreme. Very good. Dr. Kamalad is saying more. Dr. Kamalad is doing great, the response is Sanskrit and machine language. Okay, so none of these are wrong answers. All of these are correct answers because the Vedas are huge, are massive, and what a person can learn from them is There is no end to it. In fact, all of those can be separate research projects where we can go deep into the Puranas, deep into the Vedas, and present it for the modern audience. And that is what I have done. I'm a data scientist by training. I got my training at University of Michigan, which is a top school for computer science. And after that, I've been working part-time as a data scientist at a company there in the US. And while I was working there, since I have interest in the Puranas, because as you can see, I have a tilak, so I joined the Hare Krishnas. So I was studying also the Puranas alongside. And by studying the Puranas, I came across amazing scientific facts, which I tried to present to the modern audience in their language. Okay. So this is the topic of my research today. I'm going to share 5 facts which the NASA, not just NASA actually, even other scientific organizations can benefit from the Puranas. And I have written a book in which there are many more such details. Okay. So first of all, what are the Puranas? I guess I don't need to tell this audience because all of you understand the Puranas are basically historical record. They describe Purana, they describe in ancient events. There are many Puranas, however, there are 18 Mahapuranas, which comprise of 400,000 verses, as it is stated in the Matsya Purana. And in this, it is said in Chandogya Upanishad and Brihat Aranyaka Upanishad that the Puranas Itihasas constitute the 5th Veda. So in one sense, they are also Veda. Now, what are the 5 facts in the Puranas which I'm going to discuss today? So these are the 5 facts which I will show are there in the which I will discuss in the Puranas, and there are many more as will be discussed as it is discussed in my book. So what are the 5 facts? Number 1, I will discuss age of the universe. The Puranas state age of the universe to be these many years. Number 2, the Puranas state a very precise age of the sun. They state a very precise depth of the sun. They state the date for Earth's greatest mass extinction. And they also state distances, and one such distance being the heliosphere boundary, which is at 121 aeronautical units. So there are 4 dates and 1 distance data point, which I'm going to discuss today in the presentation. Okay, so before we go into this presentation, we need to understand epistemology. What is epistemology? Epistemology is how do you know what you know? Like if I were to ask you how many people are there in this Zoom call, you will go and you will look at the participants and you will say, hey, it says 83 participants. Okay. Such a way of gaining knowledge is called prataksha, where you use your own senses to perceive knowledge. And there are in the Nyaya literature, there are 10 evidences discussed. What are the 10 evidences? Prataksha, Shabda, Anumana, Upamana, Arthapatti, Abhava, Sambhava, Cheshta. What else is there? And a couple more. I already said 8 of them. So there are 10 such pramanas discussed in the Nyaya literature. However, of all those 10, of those 10, we can divide them into 2 categories. So all the pramanas lie in the category of ascending, except the Shabda. Shabda is gaining knowledge which is coming from the sages through the Vedas or Puranas. So there are 2 sets of gaining knowledge. One is by our own effort, by our own capability, by our own effort, by our own intelligence. That is known as Arohan process or ascending process. And then there is the Avarohan process where the knowledge comes from the Vedas and Puranas. And note, this is different from Arsha. So Arsha is words of the great sages, which is not same as Shabda. Shabda is the words which are directly stated in the Vedas and Puranas, whereas Arsha is the words spoken by great sages or even demigods. So there's a slight difference there. Anyway, so there are 2 ways of getting knowledge, the Arohan and the Avarohan. Once we understand it, we look at the modern method of getting knowledge. So what's the modern method of getting knowledge? These are the 5 steps which are used in the modern science. First, it starts with an observation. We observe something. That's how modern science works. Then they come up with the induction. What's induction? Okay, for n equal to 1, this is the case. Like suppose we're trying to see suppose the problem statement is man mortal? Man mortal means is every man going to die? Suppose this is the question being asked. Now, how can we answer it? Now, from modern scientific perspective, this is how you will answer. So you will go and you will look, is everybody dying? Okay. So I know one person, he died. I looked at the second person, he died. So n equal to 1, n equal to 2, n equal to 3, it's working. So then you deduce that man is mortal based on this. And then you have to go and test it. So you take this hypothesis of yours and you check on every person. You go and see if this person is going to die or not. Okay, he died. Is person going to die or not? Die. And you keep on evaluating until one day you found an exception. Suppose you find somebody who doesn't die. Then you are thought, okay, what to do? Maybe I need to add an exception to it. So this is how modern science works. Like in the beginning, it was Newton who saw an apple fall. And then he came up with his laws of nature or the law of gravity. But later came Einstein and he said, hey, we're going wrong here. Space and time, they both should be malleable. So he came up with his own theory of general relativity, which is much more sophisticated than Newton's theory of force. So in the case of modern science, the empirical method, as you can notice, it's a cycle. It's a never-ending cycle. You can never reach the truth. You always come closer and closer to the truth, to the truth value or the absolute truth. So that is the empirical method or the ascending method. What is the descending method? Descending method is that there's a supreme person. You call him Brahman, you call him Paramatma, you call him Bhagwan. He spoke the Vedas and Puranas as is said in the Upanishads, practically in all the Upanishads. And then the sages receive it and sages compose it, compile it, just like Vyasadeva. And then we as an audience, we just inquire and inquire from the sages that knowledge from the written text. And then we validate it. It's not that we accept it also as a blind faith, what is said in the Vedas or Puranas. We actually apply ourselves to it and see it. But we never feel a need to update the Vedas or Puranas. So this is the difference between the two. There's no feedback loop going back where we change the Vedas and Puranas. They stay the same for thousands of years. This model, descending method, states that the knowledge is already perfect to start with. Vedas and Puranas are already perfect. There's no need for any change for modification. That's a model. That's just a epistemology. So with this understanding, the Vedas and Puranas have both the elements of inquiry and validation. So they're not blind truth. And this is something which I'm going to discuss today. Sometimes we think that the Hindus or the common people who believe in the Vedas and Puranas are acting in ignorance. Actually, there are two kinds of validation which happen with Vedas and Puranas, and most people do perform some kind of validation. So there is a subjective validation and there's an objective validation. Most people perform subjective validation. What is subjective validation? That they read something in Puranas and Vedas and they apply themselves to it. And they experience great. So then they keep applying more and more. That's called subjective, which corresponds, the truth corresponds to one person only. It can't be really put on paper. It can't be really measured. Another way of validation is objective validation, which is sort of missing in the case of Vedas and Puranas and which is rarely performed. So this is something which I'm going to discuss today, an objective validation of the Puranas and Vedas. Note, we can't validate simple things. Suppose the Vedas and Puranas say that sky is blue, and then we come and say, hey, sky is blue. So Vedas and Puranas are authentic source of knowledge. No, that's not a proper way to test any statement. We have to look for extraordinary statements. Or as I was saying, subjective validation, people feel freedom from envy and anger, and they feel happiness, and that's why they keep on following the Vedas. But for the objective, we need extraordinary claim. We just can't come up with some like very basic facts. And we have to come up with such facts which we can show were not accessible to the ancients, to the ancient people. Okay. So now I'm going to discuss 5 data points in the Puranas which are extraordinary in nature and which have been validated by modern science. Okay. So these are the 5 data points. Number one is, the first one is Sorry, 1 second. So the first one is the age of the universe or the origin of the universe. So it has been a kind of a big conundrum for the modern scientist to find out how old is the universe. In fact, think for yourself, when you see outside, you wonder, or any thoughtful person wonders, hey, how long has this world been there? How long has this stars been existing? How long has these, sky, earth, everything been existing? So it's a question which everybody had from their child practically, isn't it? So with this question in mind, scientists have been working on this problem for a long time. Up till year 1916, as you can see in my diagram here, right? Okay. Oh, go back here. So as you can see here in my diagram, that up till year 1916, scientists thought that the universe is eternal. Now, why they thought that? Because in 18th century, by 18th century, most of the scientists have turned to naturalism, or they didn't believe in any theistic person behind the origin. Now, in order to skip the origin, they said, hey, universe must be eternal, because if you put an eternal, then there's no need for a creator, isn't it? So with that in mind, they proposed it. But here comes the problem. In 1930, a very famous scientist, Sir Edwin Hubble, who later received a Nobel Prize also, discovered with the help of his telescopes that the galaxies were going further away from each other. Hey, if something's going further away from each other, they must have started from one place. This means the universe must have an origin. So then, based on his calculations, he proposed that the universe must be 10 to 20 billion years old. Now, here's the problem. The problem is this, that, let me see, 1 second. If I can share. So the problem is that this is not a very accurate value. So if we want an accurate value, how can we get that? So in 1980s, two scientists made a big discovery. What they made discovery? They discovered these waves known as cosmic microwave background radiation. Sounds fancy, isn't it? CMBR. You can look it up online. Cosmic microwave background radiation. Now, what they found out, that these were the waves which were produced at the moment of Big Bang. So because these waves were produced at the time of Big Bang, they could be used to find out the date for the universe. But the problem was not solved. Why? Because to measure these waves is not an easy problem. It's a very, very tough problem. So to solve it, what they did, they made special satellites. And one such satellite was sent out in 2001 by NASA. NASA is always ahead in this race, So they sent out a satellite called Wilkinson Map Satellite, WMAP. And because of that, in year 2003 and later in year 2010, they got the estimate as 13.75 billion years. So note it down. 2010, the estimate was 13.75 billion years. Now this date was pretty precise. But here comes the European Space Agency. They said, we can't be behind. We can launch our own satellite. And then they launched on their own satellite, and they figured out that the universe was 13.801. So a more precise value. Okay. And then here comes our Puranic statement. So I did some research into the Puranas, and I found out clear statements in the Bhagavad Purana and Vayu Purana which state the origin of the universe or the time of last Prakritika Pralaya. So Prakritika Pralaya happens twice in the lifetime of Brahma. Once at the end of first Parardha and second time at the end of second Parardha. We just crossed the first Parardha, as all of you know. We are in the 51st year of Brahma. So we are in the first day of Brahma. Very recently, it was the Prakritika Pralaya which happened at the end of first 50 years. So first there was 50 years, then there was a night of Brahma, then it was the Prakritika Pralaya, or the origin of the universe, destruction of the universe and the origin of the universe. then there was a night of the Brahma, and then we are currently in the half of the first day of Brahma. So almost 1.5 kalpa has passed. And that total comes out to be 13.819. Now you note this date is only 0.1% different from the latest scientific date. 0.1%. Later, I will also calculate probability that maybe the sages would have guessed this date and put in the Vedas and Puranas, like some kind of interpolation. But I will refute that later. But anyway, for right now, remember it. The Puranas have the date as 13.819 billion years, whereas the scientists 13.801. The difference 0.1%. Okay, so that's for the age of the universe. Now somebody may ask, what about how did the creation happen? Or was there a universe before it? Now, as somebody else just pointed out, that there's the description of the elements of the universe also, which are stated in the Puranas. However, that process is not given in such a detailed manner, and at least I couldn't figure out. Somebody else can go ahead and do that research. But what I did find out was that this is the second Prarabdha Brahma. So there was a universe before this, which means that our universe is a cyclical universe. So this is again a point of contention amongst the cosmologists, that whether there was a universe before it or not. The Puranas clearly state that there was a universe even before the current one. So it means the model is big bounce. Big bounce means there was a universe before, whereas Big Bang is that there is no universe before it. So the Puranas support the big bounce or cyclical universe, and this is something which we are making as a prediction, because scientists are having a fight, and we're predicting that the scientific estimate of big bounce is going to win the race. Okay, so that was data point number 1. Now, in this data point 1, we have to also realize one more thing. What's that? That currently scientists don't have any other means of verifying this date for the universe. They only have one way of getting this knowledge, and that is through cosmic microwave background radiation. Now, scientists, as we know, they're always worried. Maybe they performed some mistake. Maybe they need to fix something. So how can they fix something? They won't really know. But here, for the first time, Puranas are acting as a third-party verification or validation of the Puranas, of the NASA's work, or the scientists' work. So these are very extremely complicated scientific fact which needs corroboration, which needs validation, and Puranas are providing such corroboration and such validation. So that was data point number 1. Data point number 2, this is the age or the life of the sun. So I discussed one type of event earlier, the origin of the universe, which corresponds to the Prarabdha. There is another event of creation and destruction, which corresponds to a Kalpa or Brahma's day. So at the end of Brahma's night, there is the creation. And at the end of Brahma's day, there is a destruction. I have another slide about it later. Let me see if I can pull that out and we can share the verse. So here, this is the verse from Vayu Purana. Tato Ratrishaya Prapte Prati Buddha Prajapati Mana Shishkrishya Shukta Sargaya Nidde Puna. Then, as the night ends, Prajapati Brahma wakes up and the urge to reconstruct the solar system and feels the urge to reconstruct the solar system. So this is from Vayu Purana. So based upon this knowledge, as I was telling you earlier, currently we are in the day of Brahma. We're almost halfway through it. So 6 manvantras have passed. We're in the 7th manvantra. In the 7th manvantra, in the 7th manvantra, we are 28th Chaturyuga. 27 Chaturyugas have passed. So at the end of Brahma's night, as we just read, the construction begins because he feels the urge to do it. And between the two kalpas, there is a Prati Sandhi. Now, this is a new time unit which most scholars are not aware of, but it is clearly stated in the Vayu Purana of Prati Sandhi. Pratisandhi is practically in duration like a mantra, but in this time there is no living beings, no living entities as per the Puranas. Only Brahma is there, and the top 3 lokas are there. So, so the construction of the solar system began at this point, as you can see, and we are here. So let's add these numbers: 6 mantras plus Apratisandhi plus 27 Chaturyugas plus Satya, Dwapar, Treta, because we are in the Kali Yuga right now. And when we use this, and here we have a table, as you can see, the date comes out to be 4.563 billion years. Okay, and what do the scientists say? The scientists say that the age of the sun is 4.567. Okay, now this is also not an easy problem. It's another kind of different problem, because how do you date a sun? Actually, until year 1930s, scientists didn't even know how the sun produces energy. What is the way of dating it? Because some people proposed maybe there's a lot of coal there. Some people proposed maybe there's something else, maybe this, maybe that. But the scientist known as Hans Bethe, who got a Nobel Prize in 1938, he proposed it is due to a fusion of hydrogen atoms that we have so much energy in the sun. So from that point onwards, scientist knowledge or astrophysicist knowledge of the sun became magnified. Then they started looking for the oldest rocks in the solar system because they know how to date rocks. So by looking for the oldest rocks, they came across many different varieties of them, and using them they came up with different dates. And with every passing year, their dating techniques became more and more precise. So in 1943, scientists thought that the sun was 4.5 billion year old. In 1980, scientists thought that the sun was 4.6 billion year old. In 2018, that is the latest data is 4.567. So what is the difference? The difference between scientific data and the Puranic data is 0.1%. Actually, to be exact, 0.08%. And that's not the end of it. There's another data point in this one. What is that? The demise of the sun. So our sun is right here, the yellow one here in the middle. It was right here, the birth of the sun, right in the beginning of Brahma's day, at the end of Brahma's day. So when will this sun die? That's also a very important question. Now the Puranas give an exact value. What is that? 5.347 billion years. Scientists don't know because they have a big range. They think somewhere between 5 to 8 billion years. The reason they don't know, because they don't yet completely understand the sun and they're working on it. But what they do know is that by looking at the other stars in the sky, that our sun is going to become a red giant, which is also clearly stated in the Puranas that when the time comes for the sun to destroy itself, or the end of Brahma's day, the sun will become huge. In fact, it's mentioned to become at least 7 times huge by this period, and it will be red in color. Wow, isn't it amazing that the scientists are trying to figure out the future of the sun, which is plainly stated in the Puranas with a precise value. So this also will be tested in the future. We're making a prediction, 5.347, and scientists have an estimate. Let's see, where do we meet? So with this understanding, that was data point number 2 and 3. And for those of you who don't understand this point, Brahmaji is at the top of the 14 lokas. There are 14 planetary systems, and the 3 are left intact, and the rest are destroyed at the end of Brahma's day. And at the beginning of Brahma's day, these are reconstructed. Okay, so we are talking about Visarga, which is secondary creation performed by Brahma in the end of his night or the beginning of his day. Okay, so that was data point number 2 and 3. Now let's go to data point number 4. Now, data point number 4 corresponds to a pralaya, another pralaya. So there are different kinds of pralaya discussed in the Puranas. So we discussed already Prakritika pralaya. We discussed Daina pralaya, which corresponds to demise of the sun. And there's another type of pralaya discussed in the Puranas. And before I answer that, I would like to take responses from the audience. What other pralaya is discussed? What other type of pralaya is discussed in the Puranas? Anyone? You can put in the chat box or you can speak. What other type of pralaya is discussed in the Puranas? Yes, Durgaji.
Prakrita Pralaya.
Prakriti Pralaya we already discussed. That corresponds to the origin of the universe, destruction of the universe. We discussed that. And we also discussed Daina Pralaya, which corresponded to the birth and death of the sun. Now we're talking about the another type of pralaya which is discussed. There are 4 types of pralaya discussed in the Puranas, by the way. 4.
Atyantika Pralaya.
Atyantika pralaya corresponds to the self, which is not really discussing
Yes.
here. There's one
It
more
is
one.
not there, but it is one of the pralayas.
Khanda Pralaya?
Which one?
Khanda Pralaya?
No, Khanda pralaya. I'm not. I'm not aware of it. It's not in the Puranas. Maybe somewhere else.
Naimitika Purana. Naimittika Pralaya. Naimittika Pralaya.
We already discussed. Naimittika Pralaya we discussed already. That's the Daina Pralaya. That's called Naimittika Pralaya.
Nitya Pralaya.
Sorry?
Nitya Pralaya.
Nitya Pralaya and Naimittika Pralaya, they correspond to the same one. There's one more. It's called Manvantar Pralaya, which happens at the end of every Manvantara. There may be other names for it also, but since I'm not a Sanskrit expert, I apologize if I told somebody wrong. But the third type of pralaya which is discussed in the Puranas is Manvantara Pralaya, which happens at the end of every Manvantara. Okay, so let's go back to our diagram as I was showing you here. Okay, so in this one, as you can see, there are 6 Manvantras passed. So at the end of every Manvantara, there is a pralaya. So the last pralaya which happened for the Manvantara was here, just before the beginning of our Vaivasvata Manvantara, or the end of Chakshusha Manvantara. And it is described in the Puranas that that pralaya was the biggest Manvantara pralaya in the whole day of Brahma up till now. It was very severe. And it corresponded to an avatar of Vishnu. Which avatar of Vishnu does it correspond to? Let's see some more answers. The biggest pralaya in the day of Brahma, in the current day of Brahma.
Matsya Purana.
Haribol, that's great. You already know the answer, so actually I should have told because she reviewed my work. Okay, anyway, so it was Matsya Avatar pralaya, which happened at the end of Chakshusha Manvantara, or at the beginning of Vaivasvata Manvantara. So this is the biggest pralaya which is discussed in the Puranas. It was as big as the Daina Pralaya, or the Brahma's end of day. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes in his commentary on the Bhagavad Purana that it was almost as if Brahma went to sleep during the middle of the day. You know, like all of us want to take a nap. So it felt almost like Brahma went for a nap and there was a big destruction. But again, you know, he woke up and the world was again put back to their stable position. So when was that pralaya? So according to the Puranas, that pralaya was 251.2 million years ago. That was the Matsya Avatar pralaya. Now, what do the scientists say? What happened at that time? The scientists, they keep on working on different layers of the universe, our Earth. They keep digging and they keep finding out different transition points. Where is the transition in fossil record in the layers of the Earth? So they find out that there are periods when there has been mass extinctions on our Earth. Mass extinction means wiping out of a large amount of species, which practically is pralaya. Pralaya means destruction of the life system or living systems on the Earth, or the Bhumandala. So according to the Puranas, the biggest pralaya was 251.2 million years ago. According to the scientists, the biggest mass extinction on the Earth was the end Permian mass extinction, which happened 251.9 million years ago, during which 70% of the land species were extinct. 90% of the aquatic species became extinct. Isn't that profound? So this is a clear correlation or congruence of two significant events. One event from the Puranas and the other event from the modern science, which have same descriptions and a very same date. So what took scientists, again, last 200 years of digging and back-breaking scientific labor is again plainly stated in the Puranas. And this time it corresponds to the mass extinction. Such precise value. Okay, so that was the mass extinction and the data point number 4. Now let's move to data point number 5 and the last one. Now this one is a different type of data point. This is not a date, this is a distance. So as many of you know, NASA is again famous for NASA is famous for launching satellites. So they launched 2 such satellites 40 years ago, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. What was the purpose? The purpose of sending this satellite was to figure out different constitutions of the space. You know, we can see what's in our space near us, so they send a satellite there. But if you want to figure out what's very far away, so they send a satellite with such a system that it can run by its own self for next 50 to 100 years. So they sent these satellites in the 1980s, 1970s, called Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, and they're still communicating with us on the Earth. Each time they send a message, it takes them a couple of days after they send a message to reach the Earth. And they're actually becoming quite old, and they may retire in some time, but at least for now, they keep on going. So they're traveling a distance. Now, distance in the space is measured not in kilometers, because kilometer would be too many zeros to keep track of. It's measured in a unit called astronomical unit called AU. So AU means the distance between the Earth and the Sun. That's considered 1 AU. Okay. The distance between Earth and Sun is called 1 AU. So currently, Voyager 1 is at 147 AU from us. And Voyager 2 is at 122 AU from us. And it took them 40 years to travel this distance. Now, they observed something very significant at 120 AU, which is known as heliopause. So what's a heliopause? You know, our sun is a very powerful planet. It's a very powerful astral planet or star, that its solar energy creates a kind of a layer which protects our inner solar system from outside radiation. So this layer or this cover ends at 120 AU, astronomical units, which is also known as heliopause. Heliopause means the place where the helio pauses or the helio sheath ends. So from at that point, there's a big transition in the electromagnetic radiation. Okay, now this is something which they observed very recently in 2018 and 2019, which was observed by both of them, both by Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, after 40 years of traveling. Okay, now what do the Puranas state about the constitution of the space? As many of you are probably aware, the Puranas talk about, the Puranas talk about layers of our solar system also, or the Brahmanda. There are 7 layers. Here I'm only putting 3 of them. So what are the layers? It starts with Earth or Shiti. The next layer is Apa. And then the next one is, what is that? Corresponds to electromagnetic radiation or Agni. What's it that? I don't know the Sanskrit term right now, but the first one is solid. The next one is water or Apa actually. And the next one is Agni, or corresponds to electromagnetic radiation. So according to the Puranas, each layer is 10 times the previous layer. So the first layer corresponds to 11 astronomical units, which is extending to planets like Saturn. Now note, planets up to Saturn are mostly made of solid cores. Then after that, the layer is of water or hydrogen or Apa, which is, because water is mostly constituting of hydrogen or Apa. So after Saturn, if you notice, most of the planets are constituted of water or ammonia or some kind of frozen hydrogen. Then there's a big switch according to the Puranas at 121 astronomical units. So multiply this. 11 times 10. What is it becomes? 110 AU. Plus the 11 this. So the next layer ends at 121 AU. So at 121 AU, according to the Puranas, there's a switch from Apa to Agni, from hydrogen to electromagnetic radiation at 121 AU. This is the shift which is mentioned. And the next one is at and the next one is at 1,000 to 221 AU, which I don't think Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 can reach, but that's a second switch from what? From Agni to Vayu, or from electromagnetic radiation to gravitational forces. And there is some evidence for that also, according to modern scientists, according to their theories. But we're not discussing that. We're discussing only the switch here at 121 astronomical units. So according to scientists, there's a switch. There's a big jump in electromagnetic radiation at 120 astronomical units, and we observe the same as per the Puranas. So there was a fifth data point from the Puranas which we discussed. Okay, so let's see. Before I move forward, let's see if we can revise 5 data points. Who would like to state the 5 data points? Give me one at a time. You can put in the chat also. You can put in the chat if you have. So what are the 5 data points I discussed up to right now? You can turn you can unmute yourself and speak. Before I discuss further, I would like to know if you got it. 5 data points which I discussed today. Can you give me one?
So the first one was the origin of universe.
Very good. Who is this?
Sir, I'm Sunidhi Roy from St. Joseph College.
Oh, very good, Sunidhi. I like your animation also. It's pretty good. Okay, thank you. What else? That was one, origin of the universe. We need 4 more. Anybody else? You can unmute yourself and tell us what are the 4 other data points which are discussed in my today's presentation.
The number of pralayas that we have had.
Number of pralayas which we had. Yes, that's good. That's good. And which pralaya did I discuss, Aparnaji?
Manvantaram.
Manvantar pralaya, yes. And that corresponds to what? The mass extinction. Okay.
Yes.
Very good. So that was one data point. Thank you, Aparnaji. We need 3 more people to take the initiative.
The birth and death of the sun.
Haribo, who is this? Dr. Sisla
Shailaja. Hare Krishna. I'm Shailaja. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. Okay. We need 1 more data point. Who is this? Yes, you're too quiet. Can you say it loudly?
Age of the universe.
Age of the universe. We already discussed. That was already spoken. That's already done. There's 1 more data point. We discussed that already. 1 more. That was the last data point.
The layers.
The layers. Yes, that's correct. That was, who is this? Aparnaji again. Man, you're getting all the answers, correct answers. So there are 5 data points we just discussed today, and as we have been spoken here. So now somebody may raise a question, hey, maybe these sages, they were guessing something and they put in the Puranas and they interpolated them. But let's calculate the probability of interpolating them. So the Puranas have numbers as large as 10 raised to the power 62, which means 1 followed by 62 zeros. So if they were guessing one such date, it will be this much probability, very small. And if they're guessing 3 such dates, it will be this probability. And if you have dozen dates, it becomes a huge number. So definitely they can't guess it. So the guessing is out. Maybe they did fraud. But how can they did fraud? We all have Sanskrit manuscripts in our libraries. Nobody can go back and change those numbers. So fraud is also not possible. So that leaves with only one explanation. And what is that? That the Puranas and Vedas are authentic source of knowledge. Puranas and Vedas are authentic source of knowledge. They don't need to be updated. They're always correct. So let's summarize. So there are 2 ways of gaining knowledge. This is epistemologies. One is the modern science, or the 9 ways by human beings. They're inaccurate by design. They keep on evolving. They keep on constant modifying, and there are problems with human agendas. Puranas and Vedas is knowledge free from mistakes. It has individual validation inside it. There's no need to modify it, no interference possible. And now I have also given an objective validation of the Puranas. So what's the implication? Implication, the first one, as I discussed, which something which NASA can learn, is that for the first time, Puranas and Vedas are providing an independent way for verifying modern scientific claims. Number 2, it is just not laws, nature's laws, or God. It is nature's laws and God both exist simultaneously. Next, the most important one, that what is the main goal of the Puranas and Vedas? It is to tell us Vedic lifestyle, how Vedic lifestyle is an antidote to mental and physical pollution. So not only at the level of science, which is getting some numbers or making machines, but even at individual or society levels, we have so much to gain from the Puranas and Vedas. So with this, I will end my presentation. There's more I can share, but I would like to stop here because so that I can take some questions and also reflection. So either you can share a question or you can share a reflection. A reflection is basically one-line statement which you got from the talk, or it could be a question where I can answer it. So thank you again for this for the opportunity. Either you can type your questions or your reflection, or you can unmute yourself and share.
Mahoday, namaskara.
Yes. Namaskar.
Do NASA people are referring our Purana books, astrological books?
Not yet, because it's a recent research. I just published this research in 2020, 2019. So it takes time for any research to propagate and reach other people. I published also in European Journal of Science and Theology, but that's not the journal which they usually read. So I do need support from other sciences scholars and other scholars to come forward and write more scholarly papers, because that's what they like to read. And hopefully in future, maybe in few years, we can reach a place where they can read it. I did write to many scholars, many scientists, and they responded back to me. So one of the top scientists who did work on the team of Big Bang, or the original universe, she got back to me and she said that she can't believe that this is possible, because this is the first time somebody has put such information from the Puranas in English for them and their understanding. So I don't take any credit for it. I'm just being an instrument here. But it was a little hard for them to digest, and it would need a lot more people to write about it and talk about it before they can accept it seriously. So if anything, I need your help, Dr. Shishla Sailaja, and I'm open to collaborators. I'm interested in writing more papers. So if you would like to collaborate and we can write another paper discussing the implication of this research or doing some more research, and then we can really get to NASA. Thank you.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Actually, I am following this Bhagavad Gita made as it is by Sri Leela Prabhupada. So in fourth chapter of that, I think he has given about this annihilations, and he's mentioned pretty good in detail also. Like
Great.
whatever. Yeah. So I just wanted to share it. It's nothing a doubt or anything. So I just wanted to share it.
Thank you, Dr. Saleha. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for studying the Gita, which is actually the main purpose of the Vedas and Puranas is to make a transformation at an individual level. So that's great.
Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Yes, Aparnaji.
Yeah, like you said, the Puranas, the need of the hour is to make Puranas more popular, taking it to people, making them aware of it, the content of it. So I think that should help.
Yes, so I need your help to come forward. If you want to write a paper.
A paper which has been published, environmental protection through Puranas. So that is why I could answer that.
Great. Thank you for doing that. Wonderful work. Please do more of it.
Thank you.
And we can collaborate. I'll push my email address there. If anybody would like to write a paper with me or do more.
Please, we'll be grateful, in fact.
Yes, so I put my email address there in the chat and also on the screen. You can write an email to me and we can discuss more opportunities for collaboration. I'm open to
Sure,
that.
sir. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It would be an honor, in fact.
Thank you. Thank you, Parnaji. Yes, please. Anybody else has any reflection? Reflection is more than thank you. You have to share something about it, what you struck you, and there's something which you want to take home. We have a couple more minutes left before my talk ends or my workshop ends.
So universe has always been a topic of interest for students and all the people. But today, after learning the relation of the of the NASA scientists, the accuracy of the data predicted by the Puranas, it has amazed us even more.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Sunidhi. I really appreciate your feedback and your reflection. That was very powerful and very clear. Anybody else? We have a couple more minutes left. You can throw a question.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
This is Bhavna from St. Joseph's College. So I have my cousin who is interested about this space science and everything. So she used to say me about many things, and she once told me about a book called Cosmos, which is written by Carl Sagan. He's an American astronomer and a research person.
Yeah.
Yeah, so even he told in that book that Puranas are very helpful for space science and everything. But why is it not so correctly proven these days by other scientists and all?
Because nobody has written scholarly papers on it. We're just starting this field. This field is wide open. People have not yet written any scholarly papers in this field of bridging the gap between modern science and the Puranas. Most of them have written or spoken in local audiences and also not very thorough work. So it's important when we do this work, it has to be thorough. Thorough means the presentation should be first class and the arguments and the evidence should be very clearly stated. So when in Cosmos, Carl Sagan talked about it, he actually did a show. And what he said was this. He said that he's not aware of any other ancient literature which is close to the modern estimates of the universe as the Puranas. But even he was not aware of the precision and the accuracy of the Puranas. Had he been aware, he would have been amazed. So there's a lot of work to be done for us to go forward, in this field. Meena Jain is saying very informative and interesting. Dr. Mahendra is saying very useful and interesting lecture. Rukman Dev is saying Gyan Vardak Vyakhyan. Thank you. And Dr. Rajni is saying yes, Agni Tejas. Thank you. I forgot Tejas there. That's right. Thank you, sir. Okay. I guess there's no more questions. So more comments there. So I guess we can stop here and invite the organizers to finish up and share their comments. Thank you, Dr. Kanakavalli, for again the opportunity to share with the very engaging audience and very learned audience.
धन्यवादः महोदय. बहु ज्ञानवर्धकं बहु रोचकं च आसीत् अस्माकम् इदं सत्रम्. अतः सिद्धाचापदा महोदयं पुनः सर्वेषां पक्षतः अहं धन्यवादान् व्याहरामि. वक्तुं किमपि नास्ति, यतोहि सर्वेपि ज्ञातवन्तः किम् अस्ति अस्माकं पुराणे, यतोहि नासा अस्ति पृष्ठे गच्छति इति. अतः पुनः धन्यवादान् व्याहरामि चाब्रा महोदयः. एवं सर्वेषां कृते पुनः अस्माकं पक्षतः धन्यवादान् व्याहरामि. एवं श्वः अस्माकं समापनसत्रः वर्तते. श्वः 4 4 o'clock भवति. अतः सर्वेपि आगच्छन्तु. Tomorrow is our validity function, so please come in time at 4 o'clock PM. Okay. धन्यवादः. धन्यवादः महोदय.
You're welcome. And here's a link to my paper. I posted in the chat. If anybody wants it, yes, you post to everybody. Okay. Thank you again. I appreciate it.